the meeting.
Colleagues, it is a privilege to have the opportunity to address you today as President of the EIS, and it is a particular pleasure to do so from the stage of the Caird Hall here in Dundee. For it was on this very stage that my mum made her dance debut at the age of 3. This was a dance career which went on to include a Cossack dance, a sailor's hornpipe, and a routine dressed as Little Red Riding Hood. However, you'll be relieved to hear that I don't intend to reenact any of those today, although who knows where the mood might take me. No guarantees. Look at the General Secretary. Is he not just a picture of delight at the very thought? It's okay, Larry. As a P6 child once said to me in this very school, in this very city, there's no need for that, Miss Fisher. Neither the first nor the last person to have had that thought, I have to say. So that's the jokey preamble over with, and it's time to move on to the speech. And it's round about now that I rather wish I had written one. Only kidding. One of the very best parts of being EIS President is, of course, the visits to the local associations and their schools. And as I travelled the length and breadth of the country on a fabulous EIS safari, I found that many of the same issues and themes arose time and again. And one matter which almost all local associations impressed upon me was the absolute necessity that I say in my speech that my visit to their local association was the absolute very best one of my presidential year, and that it was better than my visits to any of the others. So I intend to deal with that by channeling Bruce Forsyth and Strictly Come Dancing and say, you are all my favourites. But colleagues, I would very much like to thank all the local associations who invited me to visit them and to visit their schools in both my Vice President and my presidential years. I would also like to thank my own local association, Glasgow, for never inviting me to speak to them during either my vice presidential or presidential years. But to be fair, I think they've probably suffered enough. I would like to thank everyone in the Glasgow Local Association for all their help and support and encouragement, and in particular Susan Quinn, Carolyn Ritchie and Jane Rowe for their friendship and good advice all the way through this. I would like to thank all the local associations and SGAs and networks and staff for the tremendous work they do on behalf of our members. I would like to thank my family, even though sometimes they're more of a nuisance than anything else. And of course, with the notable thanks must go to my mother, whose passionate belief in the importance of a good education and passionate belief in me, without which I could not have done this. Thank you. Not allowed to stop myself having a wee cry. It would be a shocking omission, colleagues, not to thank all of our amazing EIS staff, all of whom have shown me unflinching kindness and patience. And I would, of course, like to thank the General Secretary and all the officials for their support and help. And as all of us in the Office Bearers Group move on to pastures new this year, I would like to wish all my fellow office bearers well, Margaret for her retirement, and Alison and Bill as they move into their new office bearer posts. As I said earlier, colleagues, there have been common themes and issues emerging from my local association visits, and one of those is a growing concern about data. Concern about the collection of data, about the use and purpose of that data, about the importance given to the data over qualitative and formative assessment, about the workload attached to it, about the stress engendered by it, and so on. I've heard of one local association where schools are being asked to collate 45 different pieces of information for all the children who attract the pupil equity funding. That may be all very well if you have a few of those pupils, but I calculate if you have 200 of them, that's 9,000 tiny little boxes to be filled in. I'm hearing of schools who are bringing standardised assessment in for the years in between P1, 4 and 7 to prove that they have used their equity funding wisely. And we are also beginning to hear of schools who are using the results of the SNSAs to set in first year. And this growing obsession with data runs contrary to the ethos of Curriculum for Excellence, as indeed does the introduction of standardised assessments in the first place. I'm sure we've all been aware of the recent outcry of the experience of Primary 1 children sitting the SNSAs. Reports of wee ones crying, of saying to their teacher, "I'm not very good, am I?" at 4 years old. This is heartbreaking stuff. How is that experience affecting those tiny people and how they feel about school, about themselves? What damage is being done there? The EIS has been quite rightly concerned about the reintroduction of assessment in this form for all stages of our schools, and we've been concerned from its inception. Because let's be honest, these assessments weren't brought in for educational reasons. They were brought in as a response to ill-informed, inaccurate jibes made in the Scottish Parliament about alleged falling standards in schools. Jibes which took no account of context and which showed little or no educational insight. And this is one of the many problems with data. Flawed data, collected in dubious circumstances, has too often been used in the past as a stick with which to beat schools. Sorry, lost a page. And another point here, colleagues, is that teachers already have data, rich data which is gathered every day through hundreds of different tiny interactions with the children and young people and students in front of us. Through conversations with those children, planned learning conversations or by chance conversations when they come out to ask you for help. From the children's own self and peer assessment, from the work the children produce. Rich data gathered from rich classroom relationships, and it is this data which matters most, for it is this data which truly informs teaching and learning. But we must be careful, colleagues, of the new approaches to data collection that are coming through, for this is the thin edge of the wedge. We seem to be present at the dawn of a new obsession with data, driven partly by pupil equity funding, by a desperation to prove that the PEF money has not been misspent. It's an obsession which will blight both our primary and our secondary sectors. Recently at our education conference, some of us heard from a representative from Education Scotland extolling the virtues of a new system which is on its way, whereby schools will be able to compare their data with that of other schools. Why? Why would we want to do that, I asked myself. I have to say, we also asked the representative from Education Scotland on the day. And the answer? To see how your school is doing compared to other local schools. Again, why? So in our schools, we can feel bad if we're not doing as well. So we can feel superior if we're doing better. Does this really create a healthy atmosphere or ethos within our learning communities where we should be collaborating to provide rich teaching and learning for our young people? Is this a healthy atmosphere or ethos within our education system? Our secondary schools are already blighted with this via the league tables of exam results compiled every year by the media and others. This leads to enormous pressure being put on our secondary colleagues to explain and justify their results. So we have to drill down into the reasons, the answer to my why. And I can only conclude that it is to create competition between schools to make us want to get better results. Well, I have two messages for those who wish to do this. First, teachers already want to get better results for their pupils and their students, but not because we want to compete with the school down the road, but because we care about the children and young people and students in our classes, and we want the best for them. And my second message is this: stop trying to create competition between schools, because education is not the marketplace. You do this and you end up with a situation that they have down south, described so eloquently by our guest, where schools have banners up outside their buildings with quotes from their Ofsted reports as they try to compete with one another. Colleagues, we must as a profession take a firm stand against the obsession with data. It is harmful for the learners and it is harmful for the well-being of the profession. So much for tackling bureaucracy. Resist the notion that the collection and use of data is vital. Resist the obsession with testing and exams. Think of the wonderful, rich learning which goes on in your classrooms every day of the week and in classrooms and lecture theatres across the country. That's what matters. I didn't become a teacher to collect data. I became a teacher because I believe in education for education's sake. Beware, colleagues, of the dangers written of so succinctly by Michael Rosen in his poem, The Data Have Landed. First, they said they needed data about the children to find out what they're learning. Then they said they needed data about the children to make sure they are learning. Then the children only learnt what could be turned into data. Then the children became data. Another common issue which has come up as I've travelled the country is the growing mental health crisis in our schools. Teachers and lecturers, because of course this extends to our colleges and universities, are reporting that they see more and more children and young people who are experiencing mental health difficulties. Teachers are desperately worried about their pupils and feel they don't have the skills to support them. Guidance and pastoral care teachers told me they spend much more, if not all, of their time trying to help pupils who are suffering from severe anxiety, from depression, who have suicidal thoughts, who are self-harming, who are being drawn into risky behaviours, and they feel that there is little or no help for them. At one point this year, a government response was that all pupils have access to a mental health worker. Access to a mental health worker. What does that even mean? Accidentally bumping into an educational psychologist on the way to gym does not constitute access to mental health support. The numbers of educational psychologists across the country have been cut again and again. They cannot possibly provide mental health care to all the children and young people who need it. And let's be clear, when educational psychologists do come into a school, which isn't often, given the ridiculous number of schools they're expected to cover, it is usually to provide advice on children with EBD, or to provide a diagnosis of dyslexia or ASD. The idea that they are there as a mental health worker for pupils to access is laughable. And quite honestly, we no longer trust that word, access, because we've seen how that policy has failed in providing access to nursery teachers for many children in this country. In schools, colleges and universities, just as in the country as a whole, we need proper, robust, effective, widespread mental health services. 6 weeks of cognitive behaviour therapy, if you're lucky, just will not cut it for those in severe mental distress. It also needs to be much easier for everyone to find and access mental health support. Trying to find help, if you've ever done so, can be like trying to negotiate a labyrinth whilst blindfold. And some people might ask, why is this a concern for us in the EIS? But the answer is simple. Because those suffering with mental health difficulties are the children, young people and students in our care. They are the parents and families with whom we work, and because it's us too, it's teachers and lecturers and their families as well. Poverty, and in particular the poverty-related attainment gap, has been high on the agenda in terms of the national political discourse for some time now. And teachers in schools are clear that they want to play their part in closing that gap. Our college sector is central to providing opportunities to those who have already fallen into the gap. But we should also be clear that we cannot tackle poverty alone. For that, we need wider societal change. We need to be clear that having people living in poverty is a choice which society makes and which successive governments at Westminster have certainly made. It does not happen by chance. Poverty happens as a result of economic choices. It happens as a result of choosing to spend billions on war and weapons of mass destruction instead of looking after people. It happens as a result of allowing companies and the super rich to avoid paying their taxes. It happens as a result of allowing firms to employ people on zero-hour contracts, of allowing bogus self-employment and the so-called gig economy to grow. It happens as a result of benefit cuts, of punitive sanctions regimes, and of shameful policies such as the two-child policy, which tells some children in this country that they are less worthy than their siblings simply because of an accident of birth. And there's a clear causal link, colleagues, between poverty and mental illness. Research has shown that a child living in poverty at the age of 7 is far more likely to experience mental illness by the time they are 35. Our society needs to make different choices if we are serious about tackling poverty, because schools can't and won't be able to fix it by themselves. For a country whose priority is education and closing the attainment gap, the current growing recruitment and retention crisis could not be worse timing. And this would be a strange speech indeed if I did not bang the drum which we've been banging all year. Colleagues, I've heard a very interesting theory a number of times in the course of this year as to why there's a recruitment and retention crisis. I've heard it from more than one source, and I've read it in more than one place. So I hope you're ready for it, because it's about to solve all our problems. I have heard it said that maybe things wouldn't be so bad if only the unions didn't talk about how bad things were. You feel better now, don't you? Now you know what to do. Isn't that brilliant? It makes me laugh every time I hear it or read it, albeit I'm laughing rather bitterly while trying to control my rage. So the solution is not to fix the problems, the solution is to stop talking about the problems, and then it will all be fine, and we should just go around grinning inanely like so many extras in Stepford Wives. Never mind that what is being asked of teachers is not deliverable within the working week. Never mind that schools are struggling with years and years of cuts, leaving us understaffed and under-resourced. Never mind that the extension of the presumption of mainstreaming without proper funding has placed enormous pressure on already overstretched schools and overstretched staff. Never mind about the loss of so many EAL and ASL staff. Never mind about the cuts to instrumental music tuition, depriving many children of the chance to discover and develop their talents. Never mind that there has been constant change for the last 10 years, with possibly more unnecessary change to come in the education bill. Never mind all of that. It will all be fine as long as you just stop talking about it. Well, with the research from Bath Spa University indicating that 40% of our profession would leave in the next 18 months if they could, I think we need to talk about it. To be honest, what we do to teachers in this country is ridiculous. We overwork them, we underpay them. We tell them incorrectly that they are part of a failing system. We tell them that what they are doing in their classrooms is insufficiently excellent. We cut budgets and constantly expect them to do more with less. And then we're surprised that only 40% want to leave. I'm actually surprised that that figure isn't a great deal higher. Teachers have had enough of doing more with less and more for less. And when other countries and other careers pay more, is it any wonder that teachers are voting with their feet? And again, I've been doing a lot of bitter muttering when I read the Scottish Government response to the lack of teachers, when they say, but teacher numbers have risen by 500. Well, I hate to point out the obvious, but school roles have risen. There are more children, so of course there are more teachers. If there had been 500 more teachers and the number of children had remained the same, that would be an improvement. But as it is, we are merely running to standstill. So don't tell me that there are 500 more teachers when we still had 800 unfilled posts at the beginning of this year, when there are still departments in secondary schools closing and subjects no longer being offered, subjects like history, geography, modern languages, home economics, when we still have schools trying to run with insufficient staff, and when we still struggle to fill places on PGDE courses at times. And this, colleagues, brings me to our pay claim. For we believe in the EIS that a restorative pay rise is crucial to solving the recruitment and retention crisis. And right throughout our union is a big year on pay. For as well as the school sector teachers with their 10% pay campaign and possible industrial action later in the year, our FELA colleagues are again in dispute with their employers because having fought two very successful campaigns to have equal pay, the employers are now playing fast and loose with the pay rise from this year. Many of you will also have noticed that our university lecturers section are having a consultative ballot on pay. So it might not be very long before it will be a case of everybody out. For the school sector, we estimate pay has fallen in real terms by 20 to 24%, so don't ever let anyone tell you 10% is too much, especially when we are expected to fix everything. There is rarely an ill in society which doesn't become our job to fix. In a way, this is a testament to the faith people have in the transformative power of education. However, it does make you wonder why we are not paid a salary which is truly commensurate with our value to society. Because let us be clear, education is the glue which holds society together. It begins with us and it will end without us. Without education, there are no nurses. Without education, there are no doctors. There are no plumbers coming round to mend your burst pipes. There are no firefighters rescuing you from burning buildings. The skills and knowledge to go out and play a positive role in society are learned in nurseries and primaries and secondaries and colleges and university across the land. We are the only profession inextricably linked to all other jobs, all other workers and all other careers. So I have a message for Scottish Government and for COSLA. If you value a health service, then you need to value education. If you value a system of justice, then you need to value education. If you value the emergency services, then you need to value education. And if you value education, then you need, quite urgently, to value teachers, because none of it is happening without us. Thank you, colleagues.